You're listening to Crimecasters Network.
So we sit here 20 years later with no arrest in Bernita's case. I've done a deep dive into this investigation, so this is all just very much the tip of the iceberg here. We're going to be talking about Bernita White and the investigation into her murder a lot in the future. Police have always shied away from coming out and calling Artis White a suspect, but what do we say on this show?
We love retired detectives.
Yes, that's true, because they can be a lot more, shall we say, candid now. Here is retired Lansing Police Sergeant Darren Larner, who was in charge of the detectives that led to the investigation back in 2001.
You can see footage. We actually got some videotapes of the area while it was happening. Somebody had a video camera, and you can see people hiding behind trees. They didn't even know where the shots were coming from, but they only heard one, so.
And at that time, you don't know if there's more than one victim. You don't know if there's a person, a sniper out there still, an armed gunman running around Lansing. What do you guys do? What's protocol now?
That was a tough scene. That's one of the toughest scenes that I've ever seen. They thought they had an active shooter, so they wanted to get everybody out of the park as quick as they can. But as we're shooing people out of that park, every one of them is a prospective witness. So as the investigation went back on, we had to go through and try to find out exactly who was in the park. There was over 300 people, I think, in the park that day. So.
And that was 20 years ago. That's before social media. That's before it's easy to get the word out. So you guys kind of used us in the media a little bit.
Yes.
I remember you even asked if any of the people who had visited may have a bullet hole in their car, right?
Yes, we did.
So you needed some help from the community.
Big time. We reached out to the community big time because we kept running into cement walls when we'd follow up on leads, and you know, we searched really hard for the bullet because the shot actually went through Bernita, exited her, but we never were able to recover that. But we reached out, you know, we used so many different avenues of people and citizens and experts and stuff to try to figure this case out. It's mind-blowing.
Chaotic scene.
Chaotic.
Fast forward, you end up at the hospital. And are we at Sparrow Hospital?
We're at Sparrow Hospital in the emergency section, yes.
They had just said Bernita White they had declared her dead.
Yes.
At Sparrow Hospital.
Yes.
And you're there.
Yes.
What happens?
Well, we went in to observe the body, obviously, as detectives. And then pretty chaotic scene because it's a trooper's wife, you know what I mean? And we don't know any of the background or anything, so it's just a really chaotic. If you've ever been in an emergency, you know what I'm talking about. It can get very chaotic. They've got people coming and going and running. And then the next thing I know, one of the sergeants from LPD came up to me and said, well, I just want you to know that the husband had left just before she was shot. He said that to me like 3 times, and because there was so much going on, it didn't sink in, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh. So then, a couple of minutes later, somebody brought Artis White in the room to view his wife. And I'll never forget, as long as I live, and everybody in the room said the same thing. The look on his face was just like, he did it. I can't even explain it. You would have had to seen the look on his face. It was almost like he walked in there just to make sure that the job was done. That's the sense that I got.
Scary.
Yeah, almost like, and I understand that he does have some acting. He has taken some acting classes and things like that, and it just, I don't know, it's hard to explain. I wish I could have almost videotaped it. He just kind of looked at her, glanced at her, looked away, and not really any kind of remorse or anything like that. And if there was anything, if you were there, you just felt, wow, that was fake.
You guys are trained to look for things like that. In fact, you're collecting clues everywhere.
Right.
The second you hear about this.
Yeah.
That was something that you filed right away.
It did, yeah. That stuck with me. There's a few things that have stuck with me in this case, but that's one of them. And then, you know, after you're a cop for a long time, man, you got to start trusting your gut, and, you know, that's just how I felt that day. But I knew we had to do the investigation, obviously.
Yeah. You jumped right into it. In fact, a couple days later, you're leading this thing. What was that like?
As a sergeant in charge of the Detective Bureau, I'm kind of like the general manager of the detectives, so I'm the guy that needs to have all the information brought to me. I need to know what's going on, but I've got all these detectives that are working their tail off, and I mean working their tail off. I don't even remember going home for like the first 3 days. It was just information and MSP, and I read in Artis's book that he said there was some sort of a power struggle between MSP and Lansing Police. That is 100% false. I was in Tri-County Metro Narcotics, and I worked with the state police. I had several friends in the state police, and actually some of those were in charge at the time. I got with them, we formed a task force, and we started in the center of the investigation, which is what you always have to do. Who would have wanted Bernita White to be dead? And through this investigation that it is ongoing today, 20 years later, they are still at the center of that, so.
You could never get out of that circle.
No, and I'll tell you, we tried. We tried really hard, and you know, I get chills talking about this because I just remember seeing how hard all those people worked in that task force, and some of them are still great friends to this day. And we all, whenever we see each other, we're just like, you know, someday. I don't know. There's so many parts about this that it still bothers me to this day that she was shot in front of her daughter. You know, it's just, I don't know. It's a sad case, but it took on a life of its own once we got going. I mean, and there was so much information pouring in, and it just, and I told you that the file it's mind-boggling how many pages there are to that file, and I think you have a little bit of information on that. Lot of work was done. The only thing is, the reason that this still haunts me is because there's never been charges brought on that individual.
What did you think when Artis came out with his book, Who Killed My Wife?
I don't know. I guess I don't understand some of the areas that he talks about. I mean, this was a family that basically was hanging by a thread. And you read that book, and he makes it sound like losing Bernita was like the biggest loss of his life. But they weren't going to end up together anyways. She was going to divorce him. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's kind of my thought process. When I read it, I thought, well, some of it just isn't true. Some of it is kind of true, and some of it that he speaks about, I don't know. I mean, I do know, but it's from talking to other people about their family in the past and that type of thing. So I don't really know why you would, I'm not really sure what he was hoping to do with that book. To me, it didn't feel like he wrote it to find out who killed his wife. I don't know. That's the way I took it. I don't know how other people did.
He says that during your investigation, you portrayed him to the community as a cold-blooded killer, a womanizer, an intelligent, plot-planning, narcissistic psychotic.
Right.
You're okay with that description still?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So he's right on with that
He's
one.
right on, yeah.